The bright lights of the Galactic Council chamber made Captain John Mason squint. He stood tall in his blue Earth Fleet uniform, trying not to show how nervous he felt. This massive room held representatives from 17 alien species, all staring at the small group of humans with various expressions that John couldn't fully read on their non-human faces. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Now, instead of a warm welcome to the galactic community, they faced what felt like a trial. The Council will now address the matter of Earth's recent violations, said High Counselor Zexitara. She had pale blue skin and 6 eyes that blinked in odd patterns. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated perfectly into English by the small device pinned to John's collar. Commander Lisa Powell stepped forward slightly. As Earth's diplomatic officer, she had prepared for this moment for months. John admired her calm expression, though he knew she must be as tense as he was. With respect, what violations are you referring to? Lisa asked. Earth has followed all guidelines since first contact. The tall, thin alien to Zexitara's right stood up. His name was Kivax, representing a species called the Aldori. Do not pretend ignorance. Your warship, the UES Harbinger, exceeds all acceptable power limits for a new member species. Murmurs spread through the chamber. John caught sight of several delegates nodding in agreement. The Harbinger is a defensive vessel, Lisa explained, her voice steady. We built it after the Drax attacked our colony on Europa. The chamber erupted in loud voices. An amphibious alien with gills that flapped when he spoke shouted, "They mention the Drax incident, a minor border misunderstanding they used to justify building a dreadnought." John's small communication device buzzed softly. He glanced down to see Admiral Frank Daniels' face on the tiny screen. Frank was aboard the Harbinger itself, orbiting this alien world at a council-approved distance. "How's it going down there?" Frank asked quietly. "Not good," John whispered, turning slightly away from the council members. "They're fixated on the Harbinger." "I figured they would be," Frank replied. His gray eyes looked tired. "The ship makes them nervous. That's why we built it." Back on the Harbinger, Frank ended the transmission and turned to his bridge crew. The ship hummed with power around them. At nearly 2 miles long, the Harbinger was the largest vessel humans had ever built. Its sleek black hull absorbed rather than reflected light, making it difficult to see against the backdrop of space. "What's happening?" asked Lieutenant Susan Miller from her station at Tactical Controls. "The Council is concerned about our little ship," Frank said with a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Little?" Susan raised an eyebrow. "The Harbinger could probably take on half their fleet." "That's exactly what worries them," Frank replied. The ship's artificial intelligence, nicknamed Maggie by the crew, spoke through the overhead speakers. "Admiral, I've analyzed Council communications. They appear genuinely frightened of this vessel's capabilities." "Good," Frank said quietly. "Fear might keep them honest." Back in the Council chamber, Lisa was fighting a losing battle. The Council members had moved from accusations to demands. "Earth must prove its peaceful intentions," said Zexitara. "The Harbinger violates Protocol 371B regarding weapon systems for probationary species. It must be decommissioned immediately." John stepped forward. "The Harbinger provides necessary protection for our colonies. The Drax incident is closed," interrupted Kivax sharply. "The Council mediated that dispute. There will be no further aggression." Lisa placed a warning hand on John's arm. They had discussed this possibility before arriving. Earth's government had prepared for this demand. "What assurances can the Council provide for Earth's security?" Lisa asked. A round alien with spotted skin and 4 arms gestured expansively. "The Council protects all member worlds. That is the benefit of membership." John noticed how several other delegates looked away when this claim was made. He wondered what that meant. After hours of debate, the Earth delegation was asked to step outside while the Council deliberated in private. John, Lisa, and the 3 other human representatives waited in a small anteroom with high ceilings and strange artwork that seemed to move when not looked at directly. "They're going to demand we scrap the Harbinger," said George Wilson, Earth's senior diplomat. We need to decide now how to respond. Lisa sighed. We've already decided. If membership requires decommissioning the Harbinger, we agree. Just like that? John asked, surprised. After everything we put into building her? Lisa gave him a meaningful look. We follow the official directive from Earth Command. John understood the hidden message. There were plans within plans here. When they returned to the chamber, the council had reached its decision. High Counselor Zex Tara stood tall as she announced it. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, she said, her 6 eyes blinking in what might have been satisfaction. However, the warship Harbinger must be decommissioned within 30 Earth days. Council observers will verify its dismantling. George stepped forward and bowed slightly. Earth accepts these terms. The Harbinger will be decommissioned as requested. Later, aboard their small transport ship returning to the Harbinger, John finally spoke freely. So we're really giving up our strongest defense? Lisa smiled slightly. In a manner of speaking. George activated a small device that glowed blue. Scrambler active, we can talk freely now. The President and Joint Chiefs never intended to actually decommission the Harbinger, Lisa explained. We'll put on a good show, but the ship will remain operational in secret. Isn't that risky? John asked. The Council will have observers watching. They'll see exactly what we want them to see, George said. A ship being taken apart. Meanwhile, we have a facility prepared in the asteroid belt where the real Harbinger will be hidden. Aboard the Harbinger itself, Admiral Frank received the news with a grim nod. So it begins, he told his officers. Operation Shadow Fleet is now active. Are we really going to deceive the entire Galactic Council? Asked Susan. They've given us no choice, Frank replied. Something isn't right here. Why are they so afraid of one ship? What aren't they telling us about the threats out there? The ship's AI, Maggie, spoke up. Admiral, I've detected unusual communication patterns among several Council species. They appear to be discussing Earth in terms that suggest we're being contained. Frank's expression hardened. As I suspected, this isn't about galactic peace. It's about keeping us vulnerable. As the Earth transport docked with the Harbinger, John looked out at the stars. He had joined Earth Fleet to explore the galaxy and make peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Now he found himself caught in what felt like the opening moves of a dangerous game. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I think humanity is going to need the Harbinger more than ever. He didn't know how right he was. 6 months had passed since the Harbinger's public decommissioning ceremony. The event had been broadcast across Earth and to the Galactic Council. Everyone had watched as the massive warship was seemingly taken apart piece by piece. Council. Observers had verified the process and declared themselves satisfied that Earth had complied with their demands. What no one outside a small circle knew was that the real Harbinger now hid deep within an asteroid field at the edge of the solar system. Chief Engineer Alan Wright checked the power readings on his tablet for the 5th time that hour. Keeping a ship this size hidden was no easy task. How are we looking, Chief? Asked Ensign Kate Nelson. She was young for her position, but brilliant with system diagnostics. Power signature remains minimal, Alan replied. From the outside, we should appear to be nothing more than a small mining operation. The Harbinger now operated with a skeleton crew of just 50 people, all volunteers who had officially been reassigned to other duties. On paper, they were scattered across the solar system. In reality, they lived aboard this ghost ship, maintaining its systems and continuing to improve its capabilities away from prying alien eyes. Alan walked through the dimly lit corridors. To save power, only essential areas remained fully operational. The ship felt eerily quiet compared to when it had carried its full complement of 2,000 crew members. In the command center, Admiral Frank Daniels studied reports on a large screen. His face looked more lined than it had 6 months ago. The strain of commanding a ship that officially didn't exist weighed on him. Any word from Earth Command? Alan asked as he entered. Frank nodded. Intelligence Officer Greg Martinez is arriving on the supply shuttle today. Apparently he has information too sensitive to transmit even on secured channels. Hours later, Greg sat with Frank and the senior officers in the briefing room. Greg had dark circles under his eyes and kept his voice low despite the security measures in place. "I've uncovered disturbing patterns in Council communications," he explained, pulling up data on the screen. "There are repeated references to something called containment protocols regarding Earth." "Containment?" Kate asked. "What does that mean?" Greg's expression was grim. "From what we've gathered, several Council species don't just fear our technology. They fear humans as a species. They see us as potentially destabilizing to the galactic order." "Because of one ship?" Alan asked in disbelief. "Not just the ship," Greg replied. "It's how quickly we built it. Most species take centuries to advance from basic space travel to building something like the Harbinger. We did it in less than 2 decades. Frank leaned forward. "So they're afraid we'll advance too quickly and upset the balance of power." "Exactly," Greg confirmed. "And there's more. Some communications mention preemptive measures if Earth becomes too problematic." A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications were clear. The Council might not just be containing Earth, they might be preparing for something worse. Meanwhile, on Earth, a different kind of tension was building. Liana Bennett, the Council observer assigned to monitor Earth's compliance, was making her 4th inspection of Earth's remaining fleet. Officially, she was there to ensure no new warships were being built. Unofficially, she seemed to be looking for something specific. Fleet Commander Paul Rogers guided her through the Europa Defense Station. This base had been rebuilt after the Ham and Drax attack 3 years earlier. It now housed 20 small patrol ships, none larger than what the Council permitted. "Your engineers have made interesting modifications to these vessels," Liana noted, her green eyes narrowing as she studied a patrol ship's weapon systems. Though she looked mostly human, her slightly purple-tinted skin and 6-fingered hands revealed her alien nature. "Efficiency improvements," Paul replied casually. "We have limited resources now that our military budget has been cut to comply with Council recommendations." Liana ran her scanner over the ship's hull. "These defensive shields appear more advanced than what you had 6 months ago." Paul maintained a neutral expression. "We're focusing on defensive capabilities since we no longer have the Harbinger." Liana gave him a look that suggested she didn't quite believe him. "Your species adapts quickly." "It's what we do best," he replied with a careful smile. After she left, Paul immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. "Observer suspicious of tech advances. Security protocols may be compromised." In the darkness of deep space, beyond the reach of Earth sensors or Council patrols, another threat moved silently. The Vex Collective, a machine intelligence that existed in the shadows beyond Council space, had sent scout ships to study human defenses. These vessels, nearly undetectable with current technology, cataloged Earth's weaknesses while remaining hidden. The Vex had been watching the interaction between humans and the Council with great interest. The Council's decision to disarm humanity had been unexpected but useful. It made the Vex's eventual move significantly easier. Back on the Harbinger, Admiral Frank received Paul's warning about the Council observer. He called his senior officers together again. "We need to accelerate our timeline," Frank announced. "If the Council suspects we've kept the Harbinger operational, they might send inspection teams to search the entire solar system." "We're not ready," Alan protested. "The new stealth systems need at least another month of testing." "We don't have a month," Frank replied. "Greg's intelligence suggests the Council is already suspicious. And there's something else." He pulled up a star chart showing a region of space at the edge of the solar system. Several small dots moved slowly toward Earth. "What are those?" asked Susan Miller, who had remained aboard as tactical officer. "We don't know," Frank admitted. "But they don't match any known Council ship signature. They're moving slowly but deliberately toward our outer colonies, and they're avoiding all standard patrol routes." "Could they be related to these Vex that Greg mentioned?" Kate asked. Greg nodded. "Possibly. The Council records I accessed contained very little about the Vex Collective, which is strange given how thorough their other records are." It's almost as if information about the Vex is being deliberately suppressed. Alan studied the movement patterns of the unidentified ships. Whatever they are, they're being careful not to be noticed. Classic predator behavior. Frank's expression was resolute. This is why we kept the Harbinger operational. The Council may claim they want to protect peace, but they've left us exposed to threats they won't even acknowledge. What are your orders, Admiral? Susan asked. Continue preparations, but accelerate the timeline. I want the Harbinger ready for full combat operations within 2 weeks. Frank looked at each of his officers. And pray we don't need to reveal ourselves before then. As the meeting ended, Alan returned to engineering with a renewed sense of urgency. The Harbinger had been built to protect humanity. Soon, they might need to prove it could do just that, even against the wishes of the Galactic Council. In the eye, vast darkness between Neptune and Pluto, the unknown vessels continued their slow approach, their true nature and intentions still hidden from the humans they were steadily moving toward. The emergency alarm blared through Earth's orbital command station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Communications officer Heather Davis frantically tried to make sense of the incoming signals. Director Peterson, she called out, her voice tense. We have an emergency transmission from the Europa outpost. Richard Peterson rushed to her station. As Director of Earth Defense, he had feared this day might come. Put it through, he ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing a young officer with a bloody cut on his forehead. Behind him, people ran in panic while parts of the ceiling crashed down. This is Lieutenant Steve Howard at Europa Station. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple ships of unknown design. Our defenses are failing. We need immediate... The transmission cut off abruptly. Try to get them back, Richard ordered, then turned to the main control room. Sound the general alarm. All Earth Defense Forces to battle stations. This is not a drill. Within minutes, the command center filled with senior officers. They watched, in horror, as new reports came in from Jupiter's moons and the Mars colonies. All told the same story. Unknown ships had appeared suddenly and opened fire without any attempt at communication. What about the Council? Asked Vice Director Ellen. Taylor, have they responded to our distress calls? Richard's face darkened. Several Council ships were detected at the edge of our system before the attacks began. They're just watching. The implication hung heavy in the air. The Galactic Council wasn't coming to help. They had known this was coming. In Washington, D.C., President Julia Carson was rushed to the underground command bunker. Her security team moved with practiced efficiency, sealing the blast doors behind them. Madam President, the attacks are spreading across our outer colonies, reported Defense Secretary William Boyd. Council forces are present but not engaging. Julia's expression hardened. Then we know this was never about galactic peace. They disarmed us because they knew this was coming. William nodded grimly. It appears the Council is using us as a buffer zone. If these attackers, likely the Vex Collective based on intelligence reports, exhaust themselves against Earth, the Council worlds won't have to fight them directly. The President stared at the battle projections. Earth's remaining ships were mobilizing, but they were too few and too lightly armed to stop this invasion. How many civilian casualties? She asked quietly. Early estimates are in the millions, William replied. The colonies on Europa and Ganymede have been completely overrun. Mars is under heavy bombardment. Julia Carson made the hardest decision of her life. Activate Protocol Lazarus, she ordered. Send the authorization code to bring the Harbinger back online. William's eyes widened. Madam President, if we reveal the Harbinger still exists, the Council will know we violated our agreement. The Council has already betrayed us, Julia replied firmly. We owe them nothing. Send the code. In the asteroid belt, Admiral Frank Daniels was already monitoring the attacks when the high-priority message arrived. The authentication code was, the highest level, directly from the President herself. Power up all systems, he ordered, rising from his chair. The Harbinger flies again. The bridge crew responded with well-rehearsed precision. Lieutenant Susan Miller activated the weapons systems while Officer Dennis Mitchell plotted their course to intercept the attacking fleet. Security Chief Nancy, Torres prepared the ship's Marines for possible boarding actions against enemy vessels. In engineering, Alan Wright felt the massive engines rumble to life. After months of running on minimal power, the Harbinger was waking up. And it wasn't the same ship the Council had ordered decommissioned. All modifications are integrated and functioning, Alan reported over the comm. The stealth systems are active. We'll be virtually invisible until we open fire. During their months in hiding, the engineering team had worked tirelessly to enhance the Harbinger's capabilities. They had studied the technology of every Council species and incorporated improvements that none of them would expect from humans. Meanwhile, near Jupiter, a small fleet of Earth defense ships fought desperately against the Vex forces. The alien vessels were sleek and angular, moving with unnatural precision that suggested machine intelligence rather than organic pilots. Captain Linda Howard watched as another human ship exploded nearby. Her own vessel, the UES Defender, had taken heavy damage. Half her crew was dead or injured. "Keep firing," she ordered. "We need to buy time for the civilian transports to escape." "Captain, our weapons are having minimal effect," reported her weapons officer. "Their shields adapt to our attack patterns." Linda gritted her teeth. "Then keep changing patterns. We hold this line as long as we can." On the Council flagship, Ambassador Eric Wallace had been brought before High Counselor Zextara. Despite being a prisoner in all but name, he stood tall. "You knew this attack was coming," he accused. "That's why you were so determined to eliminate the Harbinger." Zextara's 6 eyes blinked slowly. "The Vex Collective has consumed 12 species before yours," she replied without remorse. "Better one planet falls than all of Council space is threatened. This is the price of galactic stability. And you call yourselves civilized," Eric spat. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Council ship. Officers rushed to their stations in obvious confusion. "What is happening?" demanded Zextara. "Unknown vessel approaching at high speed," reported an officer. It's massive." Eric Wallace felt a smile spread across his face as he recognized the description. "Not unknown," he said, "just unexpected." The Harbinger dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in the middle of the Vex fleet. Its black hull absorbed the light from nearby Jupiter, making it appear like a ship-shaped hole in space. For a moment, all combat seemed to pause, as both the Vex and Council forces registered the enormous human warship. Admiral Daniels opened a channel to all ships in the system. "This is Admiral Frank Daniels of the United Earth ship Harbinger to all vessels. The Galactic Council abandoned humanity to die. We refuse that sentence." On the Harbinger's bridge, Susan Miller targeted the largest Vex command ship. "Target locked, Admiral. Singularity weapon ready to fire." This weapon, strictly forbidden by Council law, created a controlled gravitational collapse. The technology had been theoretical when the Council banned the Harbinger. Now it was very real. "Fire," ordered Frank. A beam of concentrated energy shot from the Harbinger's main weapon port. When it struck the Vex vessel, space itself seemed to fold inward. The massive enemy ship collapsed in on itself, compressed to a point before disappearing completely. No debris remained. In the silence that followed, both human and Council observers watched in awe. The Harbinger had just destroyed a ship over a mile long with a single shot. In the Council flagship, Zextara stared at the tactical display in horror. "What have they done?" she whispered. Ambassador Wallace smiled grimly. "Now you understand. You didn't ban our ship because it violated your protocols. You banned it because you recognized what humans are capable of when threatened." The battle was far from over, but as the Harbinger moved methodically through the Vex fleet, destroying ship after ship, the tide had clearly turned. Humanity would not fall today. The Harbinger moved through the Vex fleet like a predator among prey. Each shot from its advanced weapons destroyed another enemy ship. The Vex, despite their technological superiority over most species, seemed unable to counter the human warships' attacks. On the bridge, Admiral Frank Daniels watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Status report," he ordered. "Our shields are holding at 93%, reported Lieutenant Susan Miller. The Vex are trying to adapt to our weapons, but the random frequency modulation is keeping them confused. The Council ships are maintaining position at the edge of the system, added Officer Dennis Mitchell from the navigation station. They haven't engaged either side. Frank nodded. Let them watch. They need to see what happens when they underestimate humanity. In engineering, Alan Wright monitored the ship's power systems. The modifications they had made during their months in hiding were working perfectly. The Harbinger now generated more power than any human vessel had ever achieved, thanks to technology they had reverse-engineered from various Council species. The Singularity weapon is ready for another firing sequence, Alan reported over the comm. But I recommend waiting at least 3 minutes between shots to prevent power grid overload. The ship's AI, Maggie, analyzed the battle patterns of the E-call remaining Vex ships. The enemy is attempting to regroup near Ganymede, she reported. Tactical assessment suggests they are protecting something on the moon's surface. Frank leaned forward in his chair. What would they be protecting? Ganymede was one of the first colonies hit. Susan studied her sensor readings. There's a significant power signature beneath the surface of Ganymede. It wasn't there in our last planetary survey. A forward base, Frank realized. They weren't just attacking our colonies, they were establishing a foothold in our system. He made his decision quickly. Set course for Ganymede. We need to eliminate whatever they're building there before it's fully operational. As the Harbinger approached Jupiter's largest moon, the remaining Vex ships formed a defensive perimeter. They sacrificed themselves one by one, trying to slow the human warship's advance. Back on Earth, President Julia Carson and her crisis team watched the battle through live feeds from military satellites. The Harbinger's reappearance had changed everything. The Vex fleet is being decimated, reported William Boyd with barely concealed amazement. The Harbinger's performance exceeds even our most optimistic projections. What about the survivors on our colonies? Julia asked, focused on the humanitarian crisis. Rescue operations are underway now that the Vex are retreating, William replied. But casualties are severe. Europa Station is almost completely destroyed. Mars colonies have heavy damage. Julia's face hardened. And the Council ships? Still, observing from a distance. They've made no move to help or hinder. The President's eyes flashed with anger. When this is over, the Council will answer for their betrayal. Record everything. I want evidence of their deliberate inaction while our people died. Near Ganymede, the Harbinger faced the last line of Vex defenses. These ships were different, larger and more heavily armed than the earlier waves. Those must be their capital ships, Susan said. Our conventional weapons will take longer to penetrate their shields. Frank nodded. Then we'll use the Singularity weapon again. Target the lead vessel. The devastating weapon fired once more, causing another Vex ship to implode. However, the remaining ships immediately changed their tactics, spreading out to prevent a single shot from threatening multiple vessels. They're learning, Frank observed. Good. That means they can fear. The battle intensified as the Vex capital ships launched smaller attack craft. Hundreds of fighter-sized vessels swarmed toward the Harbinger like angry insects. Defensive grid activated, reported Nancy Torres from the security station. Point defense systems engaging. The Harbinger's hull lit up with smaller weapons fire, destroying dozens of the attacking fighters. But some got through, impacting against the shields. Shields down to 87%, Susan reported. They're concentrating fire on our port side. Frank remained calm. Rotate the ship to distribute shield impact. Prepare boarding teams. I want to know what's on Ganymede. Meanwhile, on the Council flagship, Ambassador Eric Wallace watched the battle alongside his captors. High Counselor, Zexatara seemed stunned by the Harbinger's performance. How is this possible, she demanded. The weapon systems on that ship shouldn't exist. The technology is beyond what humans should possess. Eric smiled thinly. You forced us to be creative. When you demanded we decommission our only significant warship, you left us no choice but to make it better in secret. Better? Another Council member sputtered. That ship is using technology from at least 5 different Council species. 7, actually, Eric corrected. We're quick learners. Zex Tara's 6 eyes narrowed. You violated not only our agreement, but several galactic laws regarding weapons development. And you violated your promise to protect member worlds, Eric shot back. You left us to die. Consider this our resignation from your council. Back at Ganymede, the Harbinger had broken through the Vex defenses. Scans revealed a massive structure being built beneath the moon's icy surface, a gateway of some kind that pulsed with strange energy. It appears to be a dimensional portal, Maggie the AI reported after analyzing the sensor data. If completed, it could potentially allow the entire Vex fleet to bypass normal space travel restrictions. They're building an invasion highway right through our solar system, Frank realized, and the council knew. He made the call immediately. We can't allow that structure to be completed. Prepare the singularity weapon for planetary use. Alan's voice came back shocked. Admiral, using the weapon on a planetary body could have unpredictable effects. Ganymede might be completely destroyed. Better one moon than all of Earth? Frank replied grimly, echoing the council's own cold logic. Do we have any civilians left on Ganymede? Negative, reported Nancy after checking the evacuation reports. The colony was completely overrun. Any human survivors would have been killed or taken by now. Frank took a deep breath. Then we have no choice. Target the Vex structure and fire when ready. Susan's fingers moved across her console, setting up the shot. Singularity weapon locked on target. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The beam struck Ganymede's surface, boring through ice and rock to reach the Vex structure below. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the moon's surface began to collapse inward, forming a massive crater that grew larger by the second. Energy readings from the Vex structure are spiking, Susan reported urgently. It's becoming unstable. Get us to safe distance, Frank ordered. Maximum thrust. The Harbinger pulled away just as Ganymede's entire surface began to fracture. The singularity effect, combined with the energy from the Vex portal, created a catastrophic chain reaction. Massive chunks of the moon broke apart, some vaporizing from the released energy. Where Jupiter's largest moon had once orbited, there was now only a debris field and a dissipating energy cloud. The Vex gateway and their forward base had been completely obliterated. In the silence that followed, Frank addressed his crew. Send word to Earth. The immediate threat has been neutralized. He paused, looking at the destruction they had caused. And God help us all for what comes next. 3 weeks after the battle at Ganymede, representatives from all 17 council species gathered in Earth orbit. The meeting location itself was significant. The Galactic Council had never before convened outside their capital world. This change of venue was just one of many concessions they had made since the Harbinger revealed humanity's true capabilities. Captain John Mason and Commander Lisa Powell led the human delegation aboard the massive council meeting station. Behind them stood Admiral Frank Daniels and several key officers from the Harbinger, including Susan Miller, Alan Wright, and Nancy Torres. All wore formal Earth Fleet uniforms with new insignia that hadn't existed before the Vex attack. The circular chamber fell silent as High Counselor Zexitara rose to speak. Her 6 eyes no longer held the condescension they once had when addressing humans. The Galactic Council acknowledges that its actions toward Earth were misguided, she stated, choosing her words carefully. Our non-intervention policy has been abolished by unanimous vote. What remained unspoken was clear to everyone present. The Council wasn't making these changes out of goodwill or a sudden moral awakening. They were making them because the Harbinger now orbited Earth. Its capabilities, proven beyond doubt, humanity had emerged as a power that could not be ignored or controlled. We offer reparations for the losses suffered in the Vex attack, Zextara continued, and we propose a new defensive alliance against future Vex incursions. John noticed how she avoided mentioning the Council's prior knowledge of the Vex threat or their deliberate decision to use Earth as a buffer zone. Some truths were still too uncomfortable to address openly. Lisa stepped forward to respond. Despite weeks of non-stop crisis management, she maintained the calm diplomacy that had become her trademark. Earth welcomes the Council's change in perspective, she said. However, we have terms of our own." She nodded to John, who stood to address the assembly. The young captain had been chosen for this role partly because he represented the new generation of human leadership that had emerged from the crisis. "Earth proposes a complete revision of the Council Charter," John announced. "One based on mutual defense rather than restriction. One where technological advancement is shared rather than hoarded by older species. One where no member world can be sacrificed for the convenience of others." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates appeared uncomfortable, while others nodded in agreement. The recent events had created divisions within the council itself, with some species questioning the leadership that had failed to prevent both the Vex invasion and humanity's dramatic rise in power. "We also demand full disclosure about the Vex collective," John continued. "Our intelligence indicates that council records about this threat have been deliberately suppressed. We cannot defend against an enemy we don't understand." Kavax, the Aldori representative who had once been among humanity's harshest critics, surprised everyone by speaking in support. "The humans are right. Our policy of secrecy regarding the Vex has failed. 12 species have already fallen because we chose containment over confrontation." As the delegates debated among themselves, Lieutenant Susan Miller approached Admiral Daniels on the observation deck overlooking Earth below. "They still fear us," she noted quietly. Frank watched the council species arguing with each other. "Yes," he agreed. "But now they respect us too. Perhaps fear was always necessary, not to prevent war but to ensure peace is valued enough to maintain." On Earth below, recovery efforts continued in the colonies that had survived the Vex attack. The destruction of Ganymede, now just a debris field orbiting Jupiter, had shocked everyone. Yet most humans understood it had been necessary to prevent something far worse. President Julia Carson addressed the world that evening from the rebuilt Europa Station, now a symbol of humanity's resilience. "Today marks a new chapter not just for Earth, but for all sentient life," she said. Her image broadcast across human settlements from Mars to the asteroid belt. "We didn't ask to become the galaxy's defenders, but we will not shirk from that responsibility." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "The Harbinger will remain active, but it will no longer operate in shadows. From today forward, it serves as both a shield for Earth and a reminder to the galaxy that humanity will always defend itself." Back in the council chamber, the negotiations continued for hours. Earth's delegation remained firm on their core demands while showing flexibility on less critical issues. By the day's end, a framework for a new council charter had been established, one that gave humanity equal standing despite being the newest member species. As the meeting adjourned, Ambassador Eric Wallace found himself face-to-face with High Counselor Zexitera in a private corridor. "Your species has changed the balance of power in a single day," she said. "Many on the council still believe this is dangerous." Eric regarded her calmly. "Perhaps the balance needed changing. You've led the council for 3 centuries, Counselor. In that time, how many species have you sacrificed to maintain your version of stability?" Zexitera had no answer for that. Meanwhile, in the Harbinger's engineering section, Alan Wright and his team were already incorporating Vex technology recovered from the battle into the ship's systems. The reverse engineering process was challenging, but rewarding. Each advancement made humanity stronger. "The quantum communication array is functional," reported Kate Nelson, working alongside Alan. "We can now transmit messages instantly across the entire solar system." Alan nodded with satisfaction. "And the Vex shield modulation technology?" "Integrated into our defensive systems," Kate confirmed. "Early tests show a 40% increase in effectiveness." This was humanity's true strength. Not just the Harbinger itself, but the relentless drive to improve, to adapt, to overcome challenges that might have broken other species. Even the Council was beginning to recognize this quality as something to be valued rather than feared. That evening, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, John and Lisa stood together watching the stars. "Do you think they've really accepted us now?" Lisa asked. John considered the question carefully. "I think they've accepted that they can't control us. That's a start." "And the Vex?" They're still out there. Yes, John acknowledged. But now, we face them together, not alone. The Harbinger remained in orbit, a silent guardian of Earth and a symbol of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council had banned humanity's warship because they feared what it represented. They had been right to be afraid, not because humans sought conquest, but because when pushed to the edge of extinction, humanity's ingenuity became their most formidable weapon. As Earth entered this new era of galactic politics, one thing was certain: humanity would never again be underestimated.